Hey everybody, this is Dean and welcome to Photo Blue. Today I thought I'd do a comparison of the sky replacement in Luminar Neo and the sky replacement in Photoshop by Adobe. Alright, so Luminar is kind of from a series of programs, and even though Luminar just came out, they've had their sky replacement in previous versions of their software. And actually their AI sky replacement software was out before Adobe put their sky replacement software in Photoshop. Just for a little bit of background, initially when Adobe's sky replacement came out, I remember not being so impressed, and I've taken a new look at it and it looks like they've done some work on it, and it looks really, really good now. And so I'm going to compare the two. They both do a really good job, I think, but there's some differences. There's some advantages to each one, and we'll go over those. So I'm going to just kind of go through the same photograph. We're going to replace it with the same sky, and we're going to look at it in both editors. It's really pretty fast to replace the sky in both programs now. And of course, you can always replace the sky in a manual way, but there are some advantages to the sky replacement functions in both, as I said. So let's start off with Luminar Neo right here. And this is the photograph we're going to use just to point out a few things. This photograph was taken in the winter or the early spring, I guess. And you can see there aren't leaves on the trees. So this is kind of a challenging thing for a photo replacement or to make a mask of all these branches and stuff. So we're not going to spend a lot of time messing or tweaking that in either of these programs, because we're just going to show you what they kind of do naturally. But typically with a photograph like this, you would have to spend some time maybe adjusting the mask, and I'll show you some of the ways to adjust the mask. And but what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on the overall sky replacement features. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go to Sky AI, and we're going to select a sky right here, and this one right here is the one that we're going to use for both photographs. It's actually from a pack that I got from Skylum, who makes a Luminar Neo. Alright, so it's replaced that now. And one thing that I want you to note right off the bat is we actually have a reflection of the clouds in the water here, which is a really nice feature. So let's go to Photoshop. And here's the same photograph right here. And to use the sky replacement in this, we go under Edit, and we go under Sky Replacement. And I already have the sky that's selected. That's the same sky for the that we used in the previous example. So we're going to just go OK here. And so this does a really pretty good job here too as well. Note down here there is no reflection of the clouds in this photograph. So if we go back to Luminar Neo, there is, with the initial kind of setup here, I can see some haloing and some areas here that we may need to work on. We can actually use this mask refinement, global close gaps, and fix details to refine that. We can also go up here to where we have the paint mask and do refinements on the paint mask with that. So there are ways to get that closer. But right out of the gate, I think if we look at this one right here in Photoshop, I think it's done a little bit of a better job on this particular photo. Now, different photos in different sky combinations work better. And so if this was taken in the spring or the summer, there'd be leaves on these trees. So these branches wouldn't be an issue. Also, depending on the sky, that we have, it can be more or less of an issue. The sky that I picked here is actually less of an issue. If you had a sky that was from around sunset or sunrise and it was kind of yellow or orange or blue or purple, it actually does not blend in quite as well in those circumstances with this particular photograph. So that is one thing to consider. The other thing to consider here in Photoshop is it actually makes a series of layers and masks for you when it does it. So you can adjust each one of these layers and each one of these masks as you would normally do in Photoshop. So you have quite a few options to refine the masks or make adjustments to each of these layers. Now, the top layer, if we turn this on and off, that's actually the sky and the sky mask. This middle layer is actually the foreground lighting. If we turn it off, you can see it lightens things up a little bit. This final one is the foreground color. We can turn this on and off, but it doesn't really have an effect on this photograph because the light from the sky is a very white light. So if this were a sunset, this foreground color would automatically adjust to whatever color the sunset was, like yellow or orange or red. So it would make it look more like the photograph was in the same lighting. Because if you put a sunset in the photograph was taken in the middle of the day on a sunny day, it's not going to look right. So it tries to make adjustments to make the photograph look better, but also you have to remember you're going to have to match the sky to the photograph to some extent and try some things out because it's going to look unnatural with certain skies in certain lighting situations and at certain times of day. But it is nice that it can adjust the foreground lighting and the foreground color, and it gives you a lot more options as far as blending the skies with the particular photograph. Go back here to Luminar Neo. We have a lot of options on here that are really easy to adjust on this. And you can see that we can position the sky very easily using this. We can refine, like I said, the mask using these controls or the mask brush. And we have scene relighting, so we have the strength of the relighting, so we can change that back and forth to help match the scene better. We have light saturation as well. And we have warmth and brightness on here, so we can warm it up. We can brighten, so we can brighten the sky if we want to match things better. And also, we have reflection amount. And reflection amount, if you note, we actually have clouds reflecting into our water here, and it will change depending on how smooth the water is. And so we can increase the reflection quite a bit if we want to. That's probably too much. The default that it put on is pretty good right there, or you might want to go a little more subtle, so you can bring it into exactly where you feel that it works best for your particular image. So that's a nice function there as well. We also have water blur here, so we can actually blur it a little bit, or a lot even. So you can also defocus the sky right here, which is not something you do in a scene like this because it doesn't really make much sense because the trees are still in focus and now the sky is out of focus. But if you had a subject where you were replacing the sky and it was like a portrait or something where the subject was up closer, you might want to blur or defocus the background to some extent, particularly if you were trying to match a blur that was already there or a particular depth of field that was already there. Going back to Photoshop just quickly, the nice thing about Photoshop, once again, is that it has the layers and the masks here, which you can adjust individually. If we go back to Luminar Neo, we can actually go to edits after we do the initial edits. We can always go back to edits and readjust any of these attributes under sky and any attribute under any other effect or editing that we did. But also Luminar has added layers here, and it'll be interesting to see how they use that in the future. The way they're doing it now with having the edits and the history of the edits and that you can go back and change them, it's pretty much equivalent to having layers, and that was their original idea, but a lot of people wanted layers as well. So it will be interesting to see how they implement that in sky replacement, if they move some of the functions to layers for the sky as well, or if they just leave it as it is. They really don't need to change it because you can re-edit the things using the edits here and change the sky or the reflection of the sky as you want. So that's just a comparison of the two photo editing programs and how their sky replacement works. They both work very well. You might like one or the other better, so you almost have to try it with your work to see how it's working, and you can get a demo version of either program and use it to try it if you haven't used those programs before. It's a little easier to do the stuff within Luminar Neo because it's kind of set up so that you change the variables and it does a lot of the work for you, whereas in Photoshop, even though it does the sky replacement for you, some of the adjustments you would have to go back into the masks to correct and such. I'm Dean, and this has been Photo Blue, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.